Hello, members of the Nonprofit Launchpad, and welcome to a very special edition of our Friday Expert Livestream, a special Christmas gift from me to you. Today, we're going to be talking about how to create your first project, a high impact, fast funded project that helps you get your nonprofit off the ground. Now, this content is typically reserved for my one-on-one coaching and my one-on-one coaching clients, as we help them develop their project and develop the right project for their organization and what they want to do in order to get donor funding. But as an end of the year Christmas present, I wanted to offer it to you guys. Fair warning, I have a splitting headache that I have tried to address, but I'm going to do my best to get this information out to you guys. So, the goal of a first project for a nonprofit is to start building momentum for your organization. Momentum for any organization, business or nonprofit, is absolutely key. If you don't have momentum, you will have a hard time being successful. You will have a hard time continuing your nonprofit work. You have to take advantage of whatever momentum you have. And hello to whoever just dropped that in the chat. Um, so the key to Sykes, the key to being a successful nonprofit is building momentum and building momentum right from the start. So what is it that you're doing wrong, or what is it that nonprofit leaders do wrong in building up donor momentum and funding from the very beginning? There are a couple different things that I see nonprofit leaders doing wrong. Number one is they go too large. When you are starting your nonprofit, you have a vision for what you want to see. Maybe you want to build a community center. Maybe you want to help thousands and thousands of people overcome addiction. You have this giant vision of where you want your nonprofit to be, and you start there. And you start trying to bring donors on this humongous vision of what you're trying to accomplish. Number two is too much planning. Some nonprofits will develop at the very beginning, try to develop a strategic plan. A strategic plan is a 10, 20, 30-page document that outlines your mission, your vision, your projects, your budget, your funding, what you plan to do over the year. It might include a needs assessment. And this is something that larger nonprofits do and do successfully, but smaller nonprofits, I also see startups and small nonprofits try to do this. And the third thing is to not have a defined end goal for what you're trying to achieve. When donors and others are thinking about supporting your nonprofit, whereas you can see all the different ways that you can accomplish your goals, it's risky for them to put money towards you that they could be putting toward their kids' education. They could be putting toward a home or a new car for their family, or they could be putting toward groceries for that matter, depending on who you're talking to. It's risky for donors to give you money. And so when you as a nonprofit say, well, we're just going to, help all these people and you need to donate to my organization, there's all kinds of questions that appear in a donor's mind. Well, what are you trying to do? When are you trying to do it? How much does it cost? What does it take to actually make an impact? Things like that. So these are the three things that I see nonprofits doing wrong at the beginning. And there are a couple problems that you have when you are just starting out as a nonprofit. Number one, social problems are difficult to solve. Any kind of problem you're tackling, whether it's homelessness, whether it's healthcare, whether it is helping, families of single parents, any social problem is difficult to solve. If it were easy to solve, the people with the problem would have solved it already. So you may not know how to actually solve this problem. Number two, you will have trouble getting donors on board using these approaches, particularly asking for too much money and asking for that money to be forever because of one major thing, which is risk. It is risky for a donor to get on board with you and what you're doing. And this kind of waterfall model of I'm going to plan out everything my nonprofit is doing, and then I'm going to ask you for money, and you're going to support me and what I'm doing is an old model for nonprofits. It's an old model for profits. It's an old model for organizations of all types. The belief that you can sit in your chair today and plan out where your nonprofit will be 10, 15, 20 years from now is an old model. And what has been starting to take over various sectors is this lean model or this startup model. One of the more influential books in the for-profit sector is The Lean Startup, talking about how you can create experiments and innovate. Another is originals. How do people create original ideas and make sure they actually live to succeed? And another one, and this is the one that had the biggest influence on me, was little bets. You can have the biggest vision in the world for your nonprofit, and people will get on board that vision. But unless you are taking small steps, people aren't going to join you on the way. Unless you are taking small steps in the direction of actually achieving your goal, then people can't see what it takes to get from here to there, and they're not going to be interested in joining you. And so what we do in our one-on-one coaching process, and you guys can ask questions at any point throughout this live stream, feel free to pop them in. What we do in our one-on-one coaching process is we develop one project that the nonprofit focuses on and that everyone focuses on at that organization until it's complete, that you can go to donors and get funding, because the number one thing donors give to is winning. It's not your cause. It's not what you're trying to do. It's the fact that you've already made an impact. So you create a project that gets funded fast, makes an impact quickly, and you can build on. What are some examples of these kinds of projects? An organization that I founded, We Do Better, about 4 or 5 years ago. We were looking to start a mentoring program for people who are starting nonprofits. It's actually the progenesis to Next Level. We're looking to start a mentoring program for people who are starting nonprofits. And we had big visions and big dreams for this program, mentoring hundreds and hundreds of nonprofit leaders every single year, things like that. But we started out with a little bet. Little bet was we're going to mentor 5 people. And we're going to learn everything we can about what it takes to mentor a nonprofit leader. And we're going to apply all of that to our next project. And that project was fully funded within like a month or 2. Another example is an organization I'm working with right now created a college tour. And that is about halfway funded at this point. I think they've raised around 10, 15 grand for the tour. These are all little projects that are defined and get donors on board. So we're going to go through today how to actually create a project like that. Okay, step 1. You need to determine what kind of project you should do. So we've talked about the value of a project. The value of the project is it gives something that is definable, creates impact quickly, and is going to reduce the risk that your donors have for being involved with you as an organization. A good project, I suppose should probably talk about that. What makes a good project? A good first project for your nonprofit is, first of all, smaller than you think it should be. So if you say another organization I work with, they are providing low-cost spay and neuter services in Alabama for low-income pet owners. And they came up with, my first project is going to be to spay and neuter 100 animals in Alabama. I asked if they think they could easily raise the money to spay and neuter 100 animals. That's $20,000. And they said, they're not sure about that. So what I advise instead is, why don't we start with 10? Your project should be smaller than you think it is, because it should be something you should easily accomplish. So how do you determine, we'll get to how do you determine the size of the project. But number one, smaller than you think it is. Number two, aligned with your vision. The project should meaningfully advance your vision in some way. Number three, that you should um, have some sort of definitive end date for the project. So when you're first starting out, you do not want to ask donors for recurring donations all the time. What you want to ask them for is, will they give to this one experiment, this one project you're looking to do to go out and solve your problem? You want a definitive end date. This project is going to take 90 days. This project is going to take 180 days. This project is going to complete when we help 10 people, which will happen in 90 days, something like that. It needs to be definitive. And there needs to be some level of donor alignment with your donor list. Are they going to actually be interested in this project you're looking to create? So how do you create your first project? Number one, you need to define the dollar amount you can easily raise. So what you need to do is you need to create your donor list. If you have not already created a donor list, I've got a tool that I think I can drop in the chat. Let me see. This is my super simple fundraising CRM. So let me go ahead and pull this up so you guys can see it. All right. So this right here is the super simple fundraising CRM. So it's basically a donor list with a couple extra features. The first thing you want to do when you're developing your first project is figure out, who do I know who might be interested in giving me money? You put their name, you put maybe their contact information and their contact source. Most importantly, you take a guess at how much money they would give your organization. You can say, I think it'd be like $50 or $20 or $250 or $500, whatever. You take a guess as to how much money they might give your organization. And then you add up all of your potential asks and you get a total. And this is the total that you theoretically can easily raise for your organization. Another mistake I see people doing when they're creating their first project or they're creating their first funding is trying to use a fundraising tool like Popcorn or Tabling or something like that. 70% of money for nonprofits come from individual donors, and the vast majority of people will give you money without buying something from you. You just need to ask for the money. So you put down your list of potential donors and you figure out, all right, out of this list, how much money I think they're going to give me. And that's the dollar amount for your project. So the first thing you do is figure out, what is the dollar amount for your project. And I will go ahead and drop the super simple fundraising CRM into the chat here a little bit later. So number one, you figure out, how much money could I easily raise? Because the goal here is ultimately momentum. Number two is you pick the project that will help you learn the most about what you're doing. Your first project should be a test. You should sell it to donors like a test. You should know it yourself as a test. So one of the most key concepts out of Little Bets is, when you're doing a bet or when you're doing a first project, your goal is to learn as much about that project, learn as much from that project as possible. And there are a couple different areas that you can learn from. Number one, do you want to learn more about the problem that you're looking to solve? So a project could be doing a survey or doing interviews of the people you're looking to serve. Let's say that you're looking to serve homeless teens in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Well, your first project, let's say you can raise $2,500. Okay, cool. So your first project might be having 7 or 8 sit-down interviews with these teenagers and asking them what their challenges are being homeless and what are some of the things they've tried to get out of that situation. That's one way. Another approach could be doing a mini documentary about those teenagers, content creation. Another approach could be uh, around the solution. So, number one would be learning more about the problem. Number two would be learning more about your solution. So, in the case of the spay and neuter organization, their goal was to do 10 spays and neuters, and their project goal was like 2 grand or something like that. So, 10 spay and neuters for 2 grand gets you uh, a fairly easily done project and gets you momentum and impact going forward and creating your project. So, number one, you figure out what's my dollar amount I can work with. Number two, pick the project that will help you learn the most about advancing your vision. And one thing you can think about is, of my donors, would they be interested in this project? Maybe my project is an event. I think I can raise $5,000 easily. I'm going to do an event. I think I can raise $500 easily. I'm going to do an event. Would my donor list be interested in an event? Brainstorm the project that will advance your vision, help you learn about what you're doing, and be potentially interesting to your donors. And you might not know as much about the latter part, but you can think about it. And then you get into actually laying out the project. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the fundraising proposal template. I'm actually going to drop this into the chat here. So let me go ahead and drop this here. All right, cool. So I just dropped my fundraising proposal template. This is a template that you can use to create your first project and your first fundraising proposal that you can actually give directly to donors when you're talking about them, or when you're talking to them about it, rather. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it up, and we can go through what's necessary to actually put together this project. Once you have some ideas floating around in your head of what is the one simple thing I can do with the budget I can easily raise that will make an impact on my vision. Once you have some ideas running around in your head, then you actually need to create your project. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. If you guys can't see that, let me know. Just pop in and let me know you can't see it. But here is the proposal template. So here's kind of what needs to go into this project. So the first thing, obviously, if you don't have a vision statement, you need one. If you don't have a mission statement, you need one. Your vision describes the world you're looking to create. Your mission describes how you get there. It puts the project in context for the donor. So you definitely need to have a mission and vision statement. However, once you have those, the first thing you think about is, what's the project vision? What is this project itself going to accomplish? Now I've brainstormed, thought about, we'll use the homeless teenagers in Chattanooga as the example. And you decide that based on your donor list, you can raise about $2,500. Maybe actually, let's go even lower. Let's get challenging. You can raise $500. That's all you can raise. You can raise $500 to do a project. You can raise it easily. Okay. Then you decide on a project, and you've thought about surveys, you thought about content creation, you've thought about serving people specifically, and you've decided on, I want to do a mini documentary, about a 7-minute long documentary on homeless teenagers in Chattanooga and the challenges that they're facing right now. Fantastic. So you need to outline, what will that actually look like? And if you guys want to actually do this and work alongside with me, you totally can. If you go to File up here and make a copy, you will have a copy of the fundraising proposal template yourself. So feel free to do that. But first thing you do is create this project vision. So the project vision might be to illuminate the struggles of homeless teenagers in Chattanooga, learn more about their challenges, and gain support for uh, s- gain support for engaging or for helping them going forward, I suppose you could say. All right, awesome. So your project vision is, hey, look, nobody really knows what teenagers in Chattanooga who are homeless go through. So we're going to fix that. We are going to illuminate their struggles, learn more about their challenges, and build awareness so that we can actually do a program on top of this. So really think about what is this specific problem that you're going to solve with this project, and what is the vision? What does the vision look like? Then you're going to do your budget. We're going to come back to your budget. We'll put that up here. You're going to do your summary. So we won't have time to write out an entire summary today, but what you're going to do is talk about the problem, how you're going to solve it, and what your process is for solving it. So first, you're talking about the problem. So the problem, there are a couple different ways you can approach the problem. One is you can share a story. So you have a story of, Mike, and he's been homeless for 3 months. And he became homeless when he got in a fight with his parents over his gender identity. And Mike has struggled to actually go anywhere because he has a misdemeanor on his criminal record. He has a felony on his criminal record. Um, and we're looking to help people like Mike. And then you maybe throw a statistic. How many how many homeless teens are in Chattanooga? If you don't know how many teens are homeless in Chattanooga, that might actually be the place to start, is figuring that out. But let's see. We'll say there's 30 homeless teens in Chattanooga. Let's see. I actually will write this out. So every year in Chattanooga, over 300 teenagers find themselves homeless. They are homeless because of fights with relatives, um, roommate roommate issues, and a lack of access to available job services, whatever. And you put it in maybe some details there. So you're going to do your problem, and then you're going to talk about what your solution is. Few people, actually, part of the problem is few people are aware of this challenge. And while there are homelessness organizations that address it, address the challenge, for others, none is focused on the needs of teenagers. Awesome. And then you're going to talk a little bit about what is your solution. Well, your solution is to bring awareness to this problem, and you might write out a little bit of what your potential impact is. And then you're going to go through what is your process. What are the things that need to happen in order for you to bring awareness to this problem? So maybe number one is that you have to create a documentary team. And number two is you have to purchase um, video equipment and editing software, something like that. You walk through your process of how you're actually going to accomplish this project. And then you write out any specific impacts that you want to have with this project. So we're going to raise awareness. What does raising awareness look like? We're going to get 7,000 Chattanoogans to watch this documentary. Fantastic. That's a lot of raising awareness. Of those seven, and we're also going to get free media hits. on this documentary. We're going to use this to develop new programs for these teenagers. Lay out what is your specific impact that you're looking for out of this project. And then go into your timeline. A project without a timeline is a wish and a goal, but not an actual, not a real project. So you lay out what are the key dates in this timeline. So you have your start date, you have your start date, you have your milestones, and then you have your end date. When do you want the project to be fully completed by? Once you outline your timeline, then you get to budget. What are things going to cost? Now, one of the most key things when you're actually going to talk to donors about your first project is to outline the specific items that you're going to purchase and have actually done the research. So if you say, well, it's going to cost, $600 for a camera, and a donor asks you a question, well, what camera were you thinking about using? You better have an answer to that. If you're going to do a budget for a project, you need to make sure you have outlined all the things that you need and you've done your research to make sure that those prices are accurate. Also, when you're pricing out your budget, do the highest price you find that's also somewhat reasonable. So, for example, if you were looking at cameras for this project and you needed to get um, a DSLR camera or just kind of like a Canon, Nikon, not just a phone camera, an actual camera, and you looked up the camera costs, go high end because you never know what is going to happen between now. Yes, you might find a discounted camera or something like that, and you might be able to put that in your budget. But then what if the discount is gone by the time you actually do this project? Now you don't have enough money. So you need to outline specifically what you need to buy and kind of go high when you're doing that. And then once you're done with your budget, you will eventually look at when you're talking to individual donors, you'll probably put a requested investment here. One of the reasons when we qualify donors, we figure out what kind of money we think they can give is because that's going to be your ask. That's going to be the specific thing that you are requesting. It's not, can you give me money? It's, I think you'd be interested in contributing $250 to this. I think you'd be interested in contributing $50 to this. And then you leave it up to them. But if you have a specific dollar amount in mind, it actually brings the donor into a partnership with you as opposed to it just being a mass thing. Oh yeah, I'd love if you give. It's probably the worst is I'd love you if you donate something. You haven't thought about it. You haven't researched this donor. You don't care about this donor. The kind of okay is levels. Well, I think, we have 250, $500 and $1,000, which one of these would be most interesting to you? The best is I think you would give $1,000. I think you'd be interested in investing $1,000 into this project. If you do that, then even if you're wrong, especially if you're wrong high, I remember one time I walked into a billionaire's mansion and I asked them for $1 million basically, and they kind of chuckled because I hadn't done my legwork on them prior to asking. But they eventually ended up giving me quite a bit of things outside of just the money because I asked. Even if you think about people who have very little money, if you ask something, even if it's reasonably high, and they can't do it, often they'll want to volunteer. They'll want to help. They'll want to assist you in some way. So the one of the keys to this is the specific ask, and that's the best thing you can do. Even if you're high, even if you're off, you have a specific ask, then I'm not so far seen anybody be offended by that. And then you bring your budget up here. We'll say our budget's like $2,500 or something like that. And obviously you clean up this proposal. Now, key thing. When you are raising money for your project, do it individually and send this proposal after you talk to them, not before. You are the fundraiser, your proposal is your project is the tool. Excuse me. So, create this, and the final piece to actually having a budget that creates impact quickly and gets you funding quickly is the advice tour. So you're going to take your maybe top 10 donors that you think would support this, and you're going to go and ask them for advice. To say, here's the project I'm thinking about launching. Here's what I'm looking to do. What thoughts do you have for me on this? And there's an old adage: if you ask for advice, you get money. If you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you usually will get advice, but they might also just straight up give you money for it. But asking for advice gives you an easy way to start building that relationship, making it a two-way relationship between you and the donor, and getting an idea of whether the project you came up with is actually going to play well with your donors if you don't know. And then you just fundraise the heck out of this specific project. Remember, you've chosen a dollar amount that you can easily actually attain. You have come up with a project that will make an impact on your vision, and you have the specifics for that project so the donors know there is an end date and there is a point where this is actually going to be successful. And then you can build off of that. It doesn't matter if this first project is $250, is $1,000, is $800. I recommend that no project, unless you know for sure you can raise over 10 grand, do not make your first project over $10,000, because it's too big of a risk for donors to give to you. Even a donor who will give you $1,000, $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 down the line, they'll start with a small gift. This is probably not a scientific rule, but I'll toss out the rule of the first gift a donor gives you is about 100 times less than their max gift to you. So creating a project that enables them to give you a gift and give you money that has very little risk attached to it is one of the big ways that you actually gain momentum and you can start fundraising. And remember, this is December. 25% of all nonprofit fundraising is done in December. It's done in the last little bit of the year. So this is the time of year to go forward with your project and to start talking to people, asking for their advice, and getting their support so you can get some momentum going into January. It tends to get a lot harder to raise funds not impossible at all, but it tends to be a lot harder to raise funds in January, February, and a little bit of March as people are kind of recovering from Christmas and everything that they did there. So that is the main stuff around creating your first project. Go ahead and toss any questions you guys have for me in the comments. All right. Did I just overwhelm you guys? Or do you guys have any questions for me at the moment? All right, cool. Go ahead and drop any future questions you have in the comment. Oh, after you send the first letter out, how long do you wait to send a second? Okay. Um, so this is for, I'm assuming, fundraising appeal letters. Thanks, Steve. I'm assuming that question is related to fundraising appeal letters. If you're sending out the first letter, you can send out another letter within 30 days. So the general rule, which is really surprising when it comes to donors, but most donors will give again within 4 weeks. And donors who are retained for a long time usually do give again within 4 weeks. So you absolutely can send your first letter talking about what you're trying to do, and then 4 weeks later, send the second one. Obviously, I recommend individual conversations much over the letters. But if you're doing letters, you can send one letter and then another letter within 30 days. All right. I don't see anything more specific popping up. So, how far in advance do you need to send letters out? How far in advance of what would be my question? If you can dive a little bit more into detail on that. How far in advance of an event? If you're doing letters, uh, it's going to take probably a week or two for them to get out into people's mailboxes and them to actually check their mail, and then maybe another week or two to actually get the money back. So if you need to have it, more depends on how early you need the money for the event. If you need the money for the event, you know, to pay all your vendors and stuff like that, a month or two before the event, and and then you want to have a 4 week timeline in mind with letters, basically. So it's about a week to get out, maybe a week or two or three to the donors to come in for the donations to come in. So have a 4 week timeline for when you actually need the money if you're going to be sending out appeal letters. Again, highly recommend doing individual asks, individual messages, individual conversations, individual meetings. But if you're to the point as an organization where you can send out your appeal letters, send out your appeal letters with at least 4 weeks lead time before you actually have to pay for things for the event. And then you actually will have the money in time. Okay, fantastic, guys. I really do have a splitting headache. So I am going to jump off of here. And next week, I do intend to bring either a Google Ads person or a market research person next week to talk either about how to utilize the $10,000 Google Ads grant, how to get it, how to run it, how to make sure you keep it, how to make sure you get something out of it, or I'll have someone talking about uh, how to do market research on other nonprofits so you know what makes you unique and what makes you specific in your area and what's going to make you stand out from other donors. So every Friday at noon, I'm keeping it up. Good to see you guys and have a wonderful weekend going into it. See ya.